Film fans of YouTube, hello and welcome back to the channel. My name is Josh, your movie apprentice, and today I am looking at Nimona, directed by Nick Bruno and Troy Quane, and starring Riz Ahmed and Chloe GraceMoretz. Nimona follows the disgraced knight Ballister Boldheart, who during his knighting ceremony is framed for the murder of the Queen, and he is on a mission to clear his name. But Nimona, a little shapeshifter on the other hand, sees this as the perfect opportunity to become Ballister Boldheart's sidekick. Now, before I do get into the meat of the review, you can skip ahead here to get to that. Just want to do a little bit of a PSA for this movie. The main character is in a gay relationship. Nimona is a massive theme and commentary on gender fluidity. And there are those of you out there that see things like this and immediately hate the movie based on that and use your W buzzword constantly. So if you're one of those people, then go away, don't bother watching this review. But for those of you that don't let things like that detract you from a movie's quality, then by all means, stick around. So now that the more level-headed people are still here, let's talk about the meat of this movie. Now, to start off with, let's talk about the animation, because 2023 has become quite the year for animated movies. From Puss in Boots to The Last Wish to Suzume to Across the Spider-Verse last month, there has been a lot of banger animated films this year. And Nimona, if it came out any other year, could be considered an amazing piece of animation. But this year, it is definitely good, really good, I'd argue even great, but there is that caveat that it's come out in the same year as all these other great animated movies. The style in this is reminiscent of the show Arcane. That's what it reminded me of. I've not watched Arcane, but from the stills I've seen of Arcane and watching this movie, it feels very similar. There is a lack of detail in various elements of this, and all the focus is very much on the designs of the characters themselves and their expressions, because the characters in this are really expressive. Nimona especially is just this absolute ball of energy, and the different facial expressions she gives off throughout this in all the different forms is really, really well done. As for the dynamic, Chloe GraceMoretz and Riz Ahmed are the voice actors for Nimona and Ballister Boldheart. Riz Ahmed, for me, is one of the most underrated actors working today, and I've even debated doing a little video essay on if he's underrated or not on my channel. As you know, I do the occasional Is So-and-so Underrated series, and he's been a subject of that for a while. And Chloe GraceMoretz, it is so nice. It feels so good to see her being able to shine for the first time in a very long time. Everyone remembers her from Kick-Ass and Let Me In, and it just feels like she's almost been forgotten about in Hollywood. She showed up a couple of years ago in that Tom and Jerry movie. That felt like a big step down for her, so it was nice to see her being given this role to really sink her teeth into and to truly shine. She kind of has a Kelly Marie Tran transition, where Kelly Marie Tran got her redemption with Raya and was able to really show her chops. Chloe Grace Moretz gets it in this one. And this film is full of a lot of themes. As I mentioned, my little PSA, the main two characters in this, Ballister Boldheart and this other knight, they are a gay couple, and it does not shy away from that in the slightest. In fact, it becomes a big part of the story. And you could sub that relationship out for any heterosexual relationship, and it works just the same. So I'm really glad that we have this representation within this movie itself. It plays off as what it should be. It's just a normal part of everyday life, and I really appreciate the movie for that. And Nimona, like, kids can see this and just see it as a fun movie with a fun little shapeshifter that goes out of her way to constantly shapeshift as she enjoys doing it. And there's a scene where she's talking about what it means and what it feels like to shapeshift for them that really has that underlying theme of gender fluidity, and it's not hitting you over the head with it or anything like that, but it is there, it is present, and anyone can easily put two and two together for it. And again, just more representation in this movie that is filled with knights and fantasy creatures and fantasy stories. I really enjoyed. That's not to say this is all a big PC, politically correct, big messaging movie, because this is, at its surface, a fun, energetic ride. The character of Nimona, it takes literally a minute of her being on screen for me to immediately fall in love with this character. She is so full of energy. As a D&D player, she just screams the chaotic rogue with a bit of druid in there. I really enjoyed her character, and I really enjoyed the dynamic with her and Ballister Boldheart, and the journey that these two go on, and the slow transition from being sort of frenemies. Nimona wanted to go into being the sidekick of a supervillain, but Ballister just wanted to clear his name and find out who the true killer of the Queen was. That is a great dynamic, and as they slowly get to know each other more and get closer across the film, it is great. And the visual gags that come across this, and the delivery of GraceMoretz in some of the lines. There is this great bit where Riz Ahmed is exasperated about them turning into a certain something, and GraceMoretz's delivery just being like, "Yes, today I am." It's just a side-splittingly funny movie. I would definitely recommend watching this because it's just hugely entertaining. The expressiveness in the characters' faces and the transformations, and Nimona's casual want to just kill people. There are flaws with this movie. There is some heavy-handedness with some of the messaging. There's this whole sequence of who is the real villain that almost gets to the Evil Dies Tonight level of cringy, but it doesn't quite cross that line. It comes and goes fairly quickly, but it is very much beating you around the head with, hey, who are the real villains here? Who are the real monsters? That sort of thing. That is a heavy-handed element. And I will say that the reveal of who was actually responsible for killing the Queen is, unfortunately, very predictable, and the motives are very skin deep, but I don't think that's too much of a con for this, because I said earlier, this seems to be focusing on the idea that a lot of hatred is just surface level and skin deep, and we really need to start questioning it. There's a nice, powerful line that Master Boldheart's boyfriend asks the villain, and it is a very simple line, but it's a very effective line, and that is something I really appreciated for it. I will say as well that the character of Master Boldheart, he seems to have had his own solo movie before this. He's obviously not had that, but there was a whole lot about his character that we get told about, but are never really shown. There's this whole journey that he has been through, getting to the start of this movie and the inciting incident, and it would have been nice to potentially see a bit of that, but it's also one of those where if that did happen, this movie would be far too long. It would have felt quite rushed. So I can see the pros and cons of that. Like I say, Nimona is a hell of a lot of fun. It is a very fun movie with some very important messages and themes within it. And while some of it is very heavy-handed, for the most part, it is disguised under this just layer of high energy and fun. Nimona's character can potentially get obnoxious to certain people that will watch this. There are some people that see some obnoxious characters as the bane of their existence, and Nimona has the potential to be that for some people. One bit that really resonated with me, where it has a commentary on the male tendency to bottle things up and never express stuff. There's this great subtle gag that just hits home a bit too hard, and I really appreciate the film for doing that. This film does a lot right, and it is a crime that it didn't get a theatrical release. It was originally under Blue Sky, who were, of course, closed down, and it's got released to Netflix, and like with the Mitchells vs. the Machines, Netflix has another gem of an animated film on their hands. Before I get into my grade, if you like what you're seeing on the channel, consider clicking that like button and subscribe for more video content like this coming all the time. I am aiming to get a lot more reviews. I've even started doing a few more shorts as quick reactions, so you have something to just watch before you get on with your day. Without further ado, let's grade this. So Nimona is really carried by the energy that Chloe Grace Moretz and Riz Ahmed bring to these characters. The dynamic between them is fantastic. The animation will take a bit of getting used to, but after the first 5 or 10 minutes, it just feels completely natural and you are fully used to it, and you don't question it. I love that animation has been given the chance to have all these different art styles and these different techniques that really tell stories and give these stories their own particular identity. Like I say, there are some strong themes in this, and sometimes they can be heavy-handed, but other times they're really subtle, and the more important ones are handled in a bit more of a subtle nature, but they are plainly obvious to those watching. The villain, their motives are very skin deep, and it's quite a predictable reveal of who the actual villain of this movie is, and Not gonna lie, there are some moments where I was half expecting the Colossal Titan to rock up over the wall, because where they're living is basically this isolated community surrounded by these huge walls to keep the monsters out. Very Attack on Titan-esque, and that threw me a little bit, but I did enjoy the idea that these are knights in medieval times, but they're in the future. They're in the present day with future tech, and they're just blending the medieval and the future together, and it works really well. For me, I'm going to have to say that Nimona is a good cup of tea. So Nimona, have you seen it? If you have, let me know what you thought down in the comments below, and let me know what is your favourite animated film of this year so far, because there have been some outright bangers this year, and we still have a new Studio Ghibli film to come out, so that's going to be a hell of a lot of fun. But until next time, everybody, my name is Josh, I have been Movie Apprentice, and I'll see you all next time.